amazing. So many windows. So good morning, everybody. We're happy that you are here today, and we would love to start off with some chat engagement as well. So if you have an opportunity, please introduce yourself via the chat. We would love to know who you are, what institution or organization that you're with, and what you're hoping to learn today. I think we're a little curious, just so we can also keep an eye and keep that in mind as we're going through our slides together today. So who we are, this is my colleague, Catherine Berkman, who will hopefully be jumping on board soon, very, very soon, but she is a Guide Pathways Regional Coordinator for the Bay Area. And hello, good morning, my name is Stacy Teeters. I am a Guide Pathways Regional Coordinator from the San Diego Imperial region. Together, Catherine and I are part of a larger team of 18 regional coordinators who serve the entire state, all of the California community colleges in every region, and we feel very fortunate to do that. We, in our work, get to work with very diverse stakeholders in implementing student-centered and equity-minded guided pathways. And so I am very happy to be here, and I'm very involved and engaged with this SLL community as well over the years, because this is something that is very aligned with guided pathways. So before we get too far in, we want to, of course, recenter and keep the why in mind of what we are doing, why we are here together today. And for many of us, it is around our students, but we'll start off with those session outcomes. So first outcome we're hoping to get through today is around making sure, hold on one second here. Let's make sure I get the participant list up as well to admit people as they're coming in. Thank you. First outcome is around identifying elements of guide pathways, and especially around ensuring equitable learning, which is highly important. The second piece here is around explaining how you all connect to guide pathways and your role in creating and advocating for equitable learning environments. And each one of us plays a very, very critical role, and we'll go more into that in a bit. And the last piece is discuss how you can use human-centered design around problems of practice with co-creation of intentional and equity-minded learning environments in mind. So with that, we're actually going to start off with this. This is an interactive session, so I hope you've come ready to participate in terms of what is going on. We are going to start with a Mentimeter. In case you have not used a Mentimeter before, I'll be showing that in a minute, how you actually log into it. But our prompt here is we want to step back into the imaginal space. What would an equitable learning environment look, feel, and sound like to really house our conversation and time together today? So the way that we're going to do that, if you have your phone, I'm also going to drop the link into the chat in a moment on how to get here with a direct link. So let me do that. Usually I have two people doing this, so please apologize my delay and bouncing back and forth. And she is here. Hello, hello, good morning. All right, so we are joined by Catherine. And Catherine, we are just getting into our first Mentimeter.
Thank you, Stacy, and thank you to everyone for your patience with my tardiness.
All right, so you can see here on the slide, and then I have also dropped into the chat the link to the Mentimeter, and I'm going to switch screens over to that so we can participate in this together for the next few moments. In there already, that's the code. So we're going to start off with what would equitable learning environments feel like and what would they sound like? So we're going to create a word cloud jointly together, and I'm going to hide it for a moment. But we just want to take that time in imaginal space, thinking about your ideal, your dream. What would this educationally liberated and just future for learning environments look like, or sound like, and feel like for students and for the community? Thank you all for sharing the chat as well. All right, 2 responses so far. Feel free to respond a few times as you would like as well. Four so far. We're going to go ahead and reveal. Ooh, I love these. Longingness, yes. Listening. Catherine, other words that really pop out to you?
I have to say the mindset and the bravery. Those 2 really resonate for me.
Dropping in the direct link, Lisa, hopefully that'll work for you. We'll take another few seconds here and then we'll move on to the second piece. Supportive, yeah. The transition into the next one here is, what would equitable learning environments look like for students and for your community? Loving these so far. Safe and warm. Thank you to our student who's sharing it with us today.
Stacey, so many of these resonate for me. Thank you all for adding. And if it's okay, please keep adding. If you have additional thoughts, we'll share all of these Mentimeters with you. And then if okay, we'll move into the next section of our sharing.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. And as I was alluding to earlier, it is really important, and we can see through a lot of these Mentimeter responses, keeping the students at the center, really is at the heart of what we're going to do. Catherine and I are really excited to share a model today that we hope resonates with you all over the course of the next few slides to really share how we can think about guide pathways and other pieces related to that as being that student-centered piece that we are trying to really achieve as a collective of educators and with students as well. So the question is, how do we do that? So many of you have already probably heard maybe of this guided pathways thing. We as a system have been talking about it for past several years. I think it's going on 5 years now as a full system collective, and nationally, this has been a conversation happening since just about 2015, 2014 or so, in the way that this framework works together. So in case though, just to quickly cover it, we're going to start again, of course, with our students in the center, but you'll see that we think of the guided pathways pieces as not separate things or as pieces that fall one after another. They're really highly interrelated. So we'll go ahead and talk about each of these elements really quickly. The first being around clarifying the path. So this is really important because it makes pathways super transparent for students, keeping their end goals in mind and keeping them aligned with competencies, which of course for those of you here today is very key to what you do and what you care about. The second piece is around helping students to enter the path even before college or getting to university at the level that we are at. This starts even before they come to us, right? It's not when the first opportunity that a student has to register and then perhaps walk on campus or digitally connect in. It's really about figuring out how we onboard students in a way that fully supports them, that sets them up for success for the rest of their journey. And then staying on the path is hugely important, as we know, and especially right now with everything going on in the world, really attending to this piece of making sure that we have structured and work together, that we are really providing that wraparound support for the students to ensure their success as well. And then this last piece, which sometimes I feel like has gotten really left out of the conversations around guided pathways or hasn't been elevated as much, is around ensuring learning. So really focusing on what students learn. And even though this might have received less attention in the past, we are really hoping to bring this front and center and tie this in with these other pieces of what we hope to do as educators in educational environments. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Yes, those are the guided pathways elements that we would like to talk about. But Catherine and I often get the question of, well, are these guided pathways elements, are they what students should be experiencing, or is it something that the college does? And we respond with yes, it is both of those things. In terms of it being related to the student learning journey, this is what students should, if they have a very clear path, how they get onto the path quickly, making sure they are supported along the way, right? And then ensuring learning. But it's also a framework for us to think about how we need to do the design work and what areas we need to focus on to make sure we can create that equitable student learning journey that we so hope to achieve for our students. Now I'll kick it over to Catherine.
Thank you, Stacey. As we have worked with college communities to engage in student-centered redesign, we have observed them in very localized ways, impacted by their own intervening circumstances, connect together in California's statewide vision for success. And in particularly the communities we work in, we found that this has resonated as a socioeconomic call for justice. And then as we moved forward in 2020 with the anti-racist, anti-biased call to action, we realized that all of them were really unified by the 7 brave commitments to be asset-based, intentional, and collaborative, particularly as our communities were in the midst of rapid global, political, technological, and environmental change. And that we share a commitment to make our system office and colleges student ready and to be open the door of socioeconomic prosperity to all Californians. Next slide, please.
Right. So importantly, it's not only about the what, right? What are the areas that we were focusing around the redesign, but importantly, it's also about the how. We call this piece of the model that we're sharing today the approach. This is really about how this important redesign work should be done, but also about how students should be feeling and experiencing the learning journey as well. And so we'll depict that. Of course, this is something you've seen before, seeing this student learning journey and this framework around how we can make that happen. But then the approach, really, what are some of the elements that we think are important to that? First and foremost, keeping the humanity of the students and the colleagues that we work with central to what we are doing. We are creating and designing and hopefully thinking of this inspirational future because of the humans that we are trying to support. The other piece of this, and we've heard in so many different spaces, the importance that this needs to be equity-minded, anti-racist, so not just making sure that we aren't doing racist things, but we're actively fighting racism in the way that we are approaching the work together, and then also making sure it's asset-minded, getting away from that deficit frame for students, making sure that that doesn't happen, but also with our colleagues as well, because it requires a whole community to make this work happen. That goes to the culture of caring piece, making sure that authentic care can be felt by all members of the campus community, students and employees included. And then also this piece around, so important around inquiry and innovation, making sure that we do set ourselves up to have that reflective look on what we are doing, but then how can we adapt and innovate to make sure that we're meeting the needs of students wherever they're at. To be able to do that, of course, takes a collaborative and integrated approach. This integration really needs to think about de-siloing a lot of the silos that have been historical in our systems, whether that's from program to program, division of instruction versus student services, or even between intersegmental K-12, community college, and university. We need to think holistically together and really rip down those silos to make this happen. Another key piece of this is around intentionality, making sure that everything we do has a real clear purpose and for students, of course, and also making sure that it's scaled. And I think that's one of the key elements of Guide Pathways. This needs to be something that doesn't just affect 60, even 600 students. It needs to impact, right, the whole campus in terms of the number of students that we have. Oftentimes, we're designing small programs, but there could have been 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 students that had those same qualifiers, right, that would have let them into that program, but they are not being served. So we need to think in skilled ways. And then lastly, making sure that we're very transparent and clear throughout the process as well, to make sure that we can provide opportunities for feedback and input. And then it also gets to that piece of clarifying things for students moving forward, but then also a college community about how you're moving forward together as well. All right. And then this gets into the creating the holistic learning environments.
Thank you deeply, Stacy. With that very detailed visualization, in holding that in our heads, as well as your learning environment dreams, what would it feel like? What would it look like? What would it sound like? We realized that creating these holistic learning environments really would benefit from ready access, not just to the theory and the research, but to concrete practice examples from faculty and staff in California and across the US. As Stacy and I inquired in California and the US, particularly with college communities, we found not only the research, but faculty and staff efforts fell into 3 areas or buckets. where counseling, student support, and instructional faculty and staff were working on engaging in transparent and intentional curricular design and assessment. They were collaboratively building a college community culture of equity-minded inquiry and innovation. And importantly, they were taking first steps or really deep long-term steps into radical humanized collaborative learning ecosystems. In all of these cases, we found community college faculty and staff spoke to us strongly of the need to be reflective, intentional, collaborative, and to give large amounts of grace to each other and across their campus communities, as well as with K-12, adult ed, community employer, and four-year partners. They all shared candidly about the complexity of their efforts as people and organizations grappled with COVID, continuing racist, violent hate crimes and terrorism, wildfires, power loss, and heavy rains, and snows of climate change, as well as the socioeconomic suffering of wealth compression and gentrification in their communities. To say the least, Stacy and our fellow Guided Pathways regional coordinators and I are powerfully inspired and proud of the California Community College faculty and staff undertaking the collaboration and integration required for holistic learning environment creation. Next slide, please. So with that, we hope to dive in deeply and just share a lot of the faculty and staff examples and resources that were shared with us. All of these will be linked on the preceding slides with resources that you can take with you back to your own inquiry or campus teams. So our first bucket really looks about the transparent, intentional curricular design and assessment. And so mapping curriculum and competencies to pathways. I will give a full disclosure. Prior to my community college service, I taught fourth grade at Oakland Unified. In that instruction, curriculum, asset, and process mapping emerged for us as teachers as a powerful tool to not only see our students' potential paths and experience, but to grow our understanding and empathy and respect for our colleagues' work outside our own areas of expertise. With this mindset, I've been honored to work and learn with faculty and staff across California on K-14, K-16, adult ed non-credit, CTE, and transfer curriculum and competency mapping. In my experience, I've been so deeply impressed by community college faculty mapping from adult ed and non-credit, like our colleagues at Santa Ana College of Continuing Education and Merritt College here in the Bay region, as well as those mapping to ensure equitable dual enrollment, like our colleagues at Berkeley City College and City College of San Francisco, as well as those working to understand not just transfer articulation and competencies, but community and career needed competencies. Of particular note here is the work of cross-functional team at Chaffey College, working from Center of Excellence and regional and local community demand competency and data, and then setting up a mechanism to assess this in all students, as well as our local Bay Area Community College consortiums, strong workforce funded regional directors and community partners that were responding to the historic demands of redlining and wealth compression and gentrification with the creation of East Side Oakland Ventures, supporting BIPOC entrepreneurs with instruction as well as venture capital in partnership with Merritt College.
Thank you so much, Catherine. The second piece, which is related to this larger area that we wanted to speak about, is around centering student learning, really making sure that we utilize those principles of backwards design, keeping the end in mind, keeping the goal of the student, which is their learning and their progress, really central to how curriculum is created, how it's revised, how a program is structured in general, all of those things, really keeping that central to the work of what needs to be done. That provides clarity for the students. And let's get a piece, move on into a strategy on how to do that as well, that you might have heard of before, really around creating transparent and aligned curriculum and learning opportunities for students. As noted here, age is really an equity intervention and hugely aligned with clarifying the path for students. Transparent design is around having super clear alignment between the course curriculum and the student outcomes and also the assignments. So when it is clear how students can succeed on an assignment or throughout their whole course experience, that becomes a huge equity intervention strategy. Students don't have to guess what instructors want from them, especially important when we think about some of our disproportionately impacted students who might be affected in those situations, like first-generation students, students from racially minoritized backgrounds, who've often had really negative experiences with educational systems in the past. English language learners, for example, those groups, the inequity in learning outcomes is exacerbated when the design for instruction is unclear. So really focusing on making things transparent and clear, it levels the playing fields for students because after all, clarity is kindness.
Stacy, thank you so much. And I'm realizing in our own human-centered design, if you're okay with it, may we move on to the resource-specific pages to dive into those details a little bit more. And so the final one, if we could take a look at, is credit for prior learning and competency-based education. And this last group of resources that we've gathered, and you'll see it includes everything from videos with practitioners to a Canvas website that our team, Dr. Sunny Green, has created. And so what we hope to raise here was just real acknowledgement that these efforts to focus on competency-based education and credit for prior learning, again, create space for allowing students to enter the path more easily, as well as get credit for things that they've done, whether that has been in military service, jail or prison, or other work settings. We'd like to draw attention, of course, to the faculty and staff sharing of Palomar College, as well as the efforts of Shasta and their region to consider the impact of credit for prior learning on rising scholar network students returning home from jail and prison. We welcome you to check out what we've gathered from faculty and staff on our Guided Pathways Regional Credit for Prior Learning Canvas model. You'll find the link that can help you jump on and enroll. We give a large hat tip to Professor Rebecca Wong, who inspired and challenged our team to move resources into Canvas so they'd be easily accessed. Next slide, please.
Okay, thank you so much, Catherine. And as you can see, we have many, many resources for you that we can't get too far into, but we wanted to provide you as you move forward and do the work in these areas. So the next piece is around how can we go about creating or addressing some of those redesign elements to improve the student learning journey. One of these ways, and we've kind of alluded to it before, is creating learning team inquiry groups and also thinking about designing and facilitating communities of practice. So please note that I did not say faculty inquiry groups here specifically because I and others believe that it really should be more holistic. It's not just a instructional faculty thing to do that inquiry process. It really can be a whole community of people who are supporting students either directly, perhaps tutoring, learning assistance teams, student support services, also doing that inquiry with you as well, but also thinking about the people who might be not directly student facing, but who are also supporting you to figure out how as a campus community that you are creating these holistic learning environments both in and outside of individual classrooms and learning spaces as well. The second piece that we really wanted to lift up and highlight is the importance of early low stakes formative assessment. Thinking about opportunities that we can provide to students to show early and establish a baseline of where their learning might be at in particular areas. It's really key and critical, but it also helps to shine a spotlight on what they might need, right? That provides us some data, but also not specifically making these high stakes assessments, but really thinking about how they are formative and build up to a larger kind of opportunities to demonstrate competency attainment. We provide students the permission to focus on their learning rather than the grade, rather than the anxiety, right, that many have in high stakes test taking situations. We can help them be really refocused on that intrinsic piece of the learning so that they can do the learning that they really need to do, and that environment has been created and structured because we've set it up in the way that we're doing assessments over the course as well. All right. The third piece is making sure that we embody a spirit of innovation and continuous improvement with how we work as educational professionals, whether that's in the classroom or in supporting students learning in other spaces, or even as members of the campus community, again, who might not be directly interfacing. Really, how do we come together to think differently? The world which you were mentioning before of what would that educationally liberated, just learning environment look like? That doesn't necessarily exist for all students now, or in the ways that we really hope and desire. It's going to take innovation and collaboration to get there. And part of that is really thinking about how we are learning and adapting for the needs of our students continually over time as well.
Thank you so much, Stacy. And again, if it's okay, I'd love to go to the resource links because we found that in addition to strong resource is from our R1 university partners, that it was California Community College faculty and staff who have made a deep and often long-term investment in culturally relevant and universally designed teaching. This is not new. There are practitioners likely on your campus that have been doing this for a long time, particularly within our affinity groups and learning communities, as well as in services for students with disabilities. And it was here in partnership with Dr. Natalie Natal, our colleague in Southern California, that we had the chance to interview biologists and mathematicians at both Long Beach City College and San Diego City College that were infusing considerable cultural relevance and universal design into their STEM coursework. We've included links to both of their interviews, which are inspiring as well as detailed about the practices they use, the human-centered design they used to lower the anxiety, as well as create a feeling of belonging in mathematics and biology. Long Beach City College has kindly shared their cultural curriculum audit canvas with us all, and you'll find that linked as well if that type of human-centered design is of interest to you. And then finally, we wanted to express again that Stacy and I are so grateful for the chance to work with faculty and staff exploring this deep practice expertise in the areas of equity-minded inquiry and innovation. Next slide, please.
Right, that brings us to this last area of designing those radical, humanized, collaborative, and learning ecosystems that we are really hoping to achieve. The first piece, and this is also echoed in the 7 commitments related to the vision for success for California community colleges: high expectations, high support. Making sure that one of the biggest things we always hear is, oh, that's going to affect rigor. Equity is going to affect rigor. It doesn't have to, right? We can provide and make sure we keep those expectations high because research has also shown that the expectations that faculties and other people have on students affects their performance. So if you believe in them and set those expectations high, they can get there. But an important piece of this is really to think about providing the support, the structure, right, through that intentionality of how this classroom and other learning environments are structured. And then thinking about also that stay on the path, what is a student needing over time to really adapt to their needs as well. Another key and central thing related to guide pathways in general that we are so happy that we are seeing more and more of is the creation of communities around different disciplines, around different learning, around different fields of study. The opportunities there for communities to happen allows students not only the opportunity to connect with faculty in their program areas early, right? To test out different things, to participate in workshops, to get connected super early in these structures that before we did not necessarily have that same opportunity. We left it to students, right, to not have that guided support or exploration. But the other piece and component of thinking about these communities is around what are the other important connections that students should have. Thinking about those cohorts, right? We're going back to what others mentioned before. That can really create these cohorts of students around pathway group, around affinity group, so that they do have that peer support, which can be one of the most key things in making sure that students are retained and also helping them to succeed as well. So thinking about holistically, what are those options for us to intentionally create community that we might have not thought about before, and maybe Guide Pathways is leading us into thinking about things in a different way.
Thank you so much, Stacy. In addition to those key approaches, we'd also like to highlight the work of faculty and staff on student success teams and proactive interventions and supports. We are particularly excited by some of the examples, and Stacy, if you feel comfortable to move to the resource slides, by our colleagues at Pasadena City College, CRC, Bakersfield, and Laney College. In addition to the guided pathways specific resources, we would very much like to redraw attention to the RP Group Student Success Redefined and the 6 success factors as foundational California-specific student voice-informed practice, which seek to ensure student support and proactive interventions for not just retention, but for belonging for your students. The next slide we'll look at focuses on our work inquiring into faculty and staff efforts to provide for basic needs and tech equity to overcome those barriers faced by their students. As the daughter of a foster child and a community college staff member in the San Francisco Bay Area previously, I cannot speak more strongly about the basics needs challenge in the face of unprecedented compression of wealth, lack of affordable housing and childcare, and lack of family sustaining work. While these manifestations of historic oppression and unsustainable systems are not the work of our system per se, they each touch our students and communities every day. While we have drawn heavy hope from the work of national researchers at the Hope Center and CLASP, we are most buoyed by the response of community colleges to their students and families in the past 2 years to build innovative local systems and partnerships to secure everything from students' basic needs, including food, warm meals, and housing resources, to technological equity. We encourage look at these efforts, including Fresh Success at the foundation, as well as models emerging in terms of student housing and childcare. We are finding, particularly our region, the lack of available childcare has decimated enrollments and the ability of our students to work. And we note that only 91 of the California Community College lab schools remain, down from 109 originally. Thank you so much, Stacy.
Thank you, Catherine. So we've gotten to take a look over what some of those key areas we can think of as educational professionals and an educational community of other practitioners. What are some of those things that we could attend to in our classrooms, in larger spaces, right? Those things that need to be done as a collective. But we want to kind of segue into this next section because all of you have a role in this work, right? Regardless of your positionality at an institution, you play an essential role in helping to create those equity-minded, student-centered pathways and creating that vision for where you want this educationally liberated and just learning environment of the future to be for your students. So we wanted to take a step back and talk about really what spheres of influence each one of us has and how we can really identify as being these learning leaders on campus. You don't necessarily have to have a president or a dean name in your title to be a learning leader. You can be a learning leader, again, whatever role that you may play on campus. thinking first of our spheres of influence and how they might build out and opportunities that you have there. Of course, most directly that you have impact on is in the spaces that you are already operating in, whether that's in the classroom or a direct student role, or one-on-one with other people at your institution, having those really meaningful conversations around helping them to realize the need for change, right? Or to realize how we can more equitably change things for students. All of those things are really important, and you play a key role in making those humanized connections points one-on-one with the individuals who you directly connect and communicate with on a regular basis. Taking a step up, right, thinking about kind of a little bit larger of a group, you have opportunities within your departments or maybe other work groups that you're involved in campus to make the changes there, to be that advocate for that student-centered, equity-minded learning change that needs to happen. You can bring your voice and bring the student voice into those spaces. And it's really, really critical that you become active and engaged in that. And think about how you make allies, right, in those spaces so that you have that coalition, that group that can actually make the change happen in collective with one another. Again, zooming out even bigger, right? What are opportunities for you to have to influence how a division or a large college committee might be thinking or doing? Your value or your contributions are really valuable in those spaces as well. Thinking about how you can get engaged in those spaces and advocate, or if not you, how do you connect with people to share your ideas into those spaces, even if it's not directly you, if you have a representative in those spaces, to have those larger conversations, because those things go into resource allocation, right? They go into the priorities of the college. You have an opportunity as a learning leader to help shape and craft that vision for the future. And then lastly, thinking about this most large level of influence that you can have is around larger advocacy work, right? What needs to be done to change higher education, to change education systems and the way that we do things on the whole, getting involved in advocating for policy, getting involved in speaking with your local representatives to make sure that funding is going into these important things, right? That you're bringing the ideas for, we need funding for teaching and learning centers for all of the California community colleges. Those are things that we need to advocate for as learning leaders with other learning leaders as allies. And thinking about the other partnerships that we can make with other individuals, right? And other organizations who are also really committed to this work. What we're doing in our workspace, there's also opportunities for us to provide service and think holistically how we connect with and support our community of our students and other human beings in this work as well. All right, I'll kick it back to Catherine.
Thank you, Stacy. So with that in mind, we hope to ask each of you your learning leader superpowers or powers, if you're not feeling super on Friday. Using the web or your phone to connect with menti.com, use code 69637527, and I've dropped this in the chat, to share what are you already doing and what impact are you already having now as a learning leader? And then what is another thing in your sphere of influence that you could impact as a learning leader? Take a moment to reflect on those big questions, and we'd love to share with each other these practical examples of how we can make change from wherever we sit in the college.
Can you go back? You went too fast. I was going to scan it.
Oh, that's totally okay. I think this is the first question, and feel free to access the link in the chat to click through.
And you can also see it up here on the top of the slide, going to menti.com, and you can use that code there in case you want to use your phone as well.
Beautiful. Please feel free to take time to read what your colleagues have shared. And again, these links to what others are doing will be included within our resources. And I particularly love the question of who says I'm a learning leader. I am a contrarian myself, and I think it's a really important question to ask of ourselves, and to think, what is our role in this? What is our sphere of influence? And what is our sphere of direct control? And how we would like to apply any of the design principles so far to those areas. And in viewing scientists and faculty, particularly in Southern California, a lot of them said it was a slow and humble process. It began with a change to their syllabus or a change to the way that they ran their office hours, some creating a script of questions they wanted to ask their students. So I really love that question and I'm grateful for it. Thank you.
That brings us to our next piece here, right? We have a follow-up question.
Just a quick check-in on time here. What do we have till 3:15 the next session starts? Is that right?
12:15, I
Or
believe.
but 12:15, sorry.
Yeah. The time check is appreciated. I think, Stacy, are we close to on time in our scripts?
Mhm.
Okay,
Beautiful.
what time are you planning to finish?
I believe a minute before the hour, so 12:14.
And the next one starts at 12:15, is that right?
No, we end.
We go on lunch.
Oh, got it. Thank you. Sorry. Keep going.
That's okay. It's okay. It is so Friday in January.
Yeah, and Zoom, COVID, pandemic.
Yes.
All right. Yeah,
Our
sorry
state
about
is
that.
already on fire.
I felt a little responsibility just check in on that as the moderator. You guys are doing
Oh.
great. Thank you.
Todd, thank you. Thank you for your thoughtfulness. The next,
Oh, Catherine, you muted yourself.
I'm sorry, Stacy, thank you, is what is another thing in your sphere of influence that you could impact as a learning leader? And we just ask, just some future thought of areas that you might be able to impact.
Oh, so to clarify this question, right? Catherine, do you want to jump in?
Oh, sure. I don't understand. Oh, beautiful. So this is just something, thinking back to the spheres that Stacy shared. There's the initial kind of the moon of what we have control of. And then there are those ellipses or penumbras of the different areas where we have connection. So whether it's your department or your division, your larger professional organizations, or just as a Californian or a community member. So thinking about your sphere of influence beyond maybe your department, your class, your service area, or your role, your positional authority, is another thing that you could impact? So it's just kind of aspirational or imaginal. And we have a response, creating opportunities to connect with students and get their input and voice in co-creating learning spaces. Beautiful. I love this response in the chat. I'm a learner. Beautiful. Thank you.
I appreciate this recent submissions around potential causing of problems, right, with the ways that pathways can be constructed, as well as assessments can be constructed for students. So that really gets to back to that point of keeping that equity and anti-racist mindset in the work that we were doing and how we were approaching the work. Because I was one of the biggest people to say that you can try to do guided pathways, and equity isn't inherent if you don't pay attention to it.
And for our African-American colleagues sharing their desire to impact outreach, in our resources, we have a piece from the Black Teachers Project and the National Equity Project on the power of affinity groups and representations to retain. And so that might be something to take a look at. And
Yeah.
yes, Eric, thank you for your comment. It is a huge lift from the research. It is a 6 to 10 year project, and all of that was based pre-pandemic. So it is a full kitchen remodel that leads to rebuilding a wall of the house. Absolutely. Stacy, would we like to transition to the next question? Is that okay?
I think so. And I think this actually might bring us into the process check one.
Beautiful. Let me grab those links for the chat. This is my favorite part of the day. It's where you get to provide any feedback to us, which we would be so appreciative of. Oh, my goodness, I'm so very sorry. Ignore the questions, but please, that's the new process check. And so we hope that you would feel comfortable to share 3 things that would help you support your work and impact as a learning leader that may have come today or not, what you found most valuable from our time today, and what would have made the session better and more helpful to you as a learning leader. And this will help us to improve both our inquiry as well as the resources we work together to develop. And if we can, we'll include those in the deck when we share the link.
Yes, thank you so much, Catherine. And just as a note, that is a new, I think the thing is a new link here. It's a different Mentimeter than the one that we were working on before, and it's self-paced, right? So feel free to take as much time as you need for those questions, but it's very short and should hopefully only take a few minutes to respond to. All right, and that brings us here. Oh, Catherine.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you each for coming today on a Friday during back to school and February and Omicron. We're so appreciative of each of you. I work in the Bay region as Stacy works in San Diego. These are emails. Feel free to reach out to us. And we are here for any of your guided pathways questions or to connect you with the regional coordinator that serves in your region. There are 18 of us statewide working with all 116 college communities.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Todd. We hope you were able to take something away from our session today, and just wanted to leave on this inspirational quote from somebody who inspires me continually, Paulo Freire. So what the educator does in teaching is make it possible for students to become themselves. So just something to take with us and think about for the rest of the day. So
I like that quote.
Yeah.
I love the entire concept that the self is a process of discovery, which never ends.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now, but in case folks want to hang around for a moment to ask any questions, I think Catherine and I can stay on for a little bit, but here we go.